Hi guys, as React developers, we may have made a component, right? And whenever the component state changes or some other component state changes, that component either should not render again but renders again or renders like 500 times, right? And today we're gonna talk about that. Today we're gonna talk about why your component keeps re-rendering. Okay, and we're gonna see some of the common causes and how we can fix them. It's very simple, it's very basic, but very important. Everyone should know about it. Okay, the first one thing we're gonna talk about is what is re-rendering, right? Let's just understand it. Now, what re-render basically means is a React telling that component that the UI has been updated. Please make it again. That's it. That's basically a re-render is. How a re-render can happen? There are basically four ways. Okay, usually four ways. The first one is a state has been updated. For example, we can make a counter button and using set state, right? We can click on the button, this state gets changed and all. The second one is when the props change. For example, you have a child component and its props get changed, so it get re-rendered. Third one is basically when context changes, right? You have used context or some state management library, and whenever the value in the provider changes, so that component gets re-rendered. And the fourth one is basically whenever your parent component changes, uh, it keeps gets re-rendered. By default, the child component also gets re-rendered. Okay, we're gonna see how we can prevent some of the ways that re-rendering happen. Okay, uh, let's understand some common causes. But before we do that, let me just copy and paste it, right? And I'll just, yeah, okay. What I have done is I have made a parent component. It has a normal state, and yeah, and it has a child component like this. Okay, the state changes. And let me also put a console here. I am a chat. Okay, now let's see the first example. Whenever state changes in parent and the child component gets re-rendered. Okay, for example, there's a button, the value changes and it gets re-rendered again, right? Even though it should not, right? Because there is no dependency of a value here. So the best way to prevent it is choosing React.memo here, and I think here, yeah. So now let's check it. The value gets changed, but it is not getting re-rendered. Yeah, we have tackled the first way. Okay, what are the different ways? I have actually written one more way. Wow. Okay, let me tell you how. So there is this concept of inline functions. Okay, yeah. So this is concept of inline functions. What that basically means is whenever we are sending a prop, right, and it is something like this. So what it usually does is it re-renders without even checking the value. So here using a callback usually helps. It does not even wait at functions but also inline objects or arrays. For example, it's just gonna be a very simple example. Const, okay, not here. We're gonna say prop equals to, yeah, something like this. Okay, what happens is, so whenever parent gets rendered, this child also gets rendered. Reason why? Okay, so what happens is it checks the value of prop, and even though it is same, even though it is an object of value with equals to 10, but what happens is it does not compare it with the value but with the reference, and every time a new reference gets created, due to which it is not equal, and that is why it gets rendered again. So the best way to use it is actually write prop value equals to this and put it here. Okay, so this is one more way to avoid it. So far we have seen three. The first one is actually to use react.memo. The second one is to use a callback. Okay, the third one is to not directly send the value to your component, but not to directly send your value in an inline way, but to specify it first. Okay, now we have done three. The next one is basically uh, how we are using context. Okay, for example, I'm just gonna write it here. I have seen this happens a lot. What happens is in context provider, right? And we give it a value. For example, some theme, some user, some language. Okay. So what happens is, and yeah, there's a closing value as well. What happens is so many times we put so much of our code, so much of our global state values in a single context. What happens is whenever there is a change in this theme, the user and language, whichever components are using that also changes. So better way to use it, better way is actually to do something like, for example, a theme provider, then a user provider, then a language provider. Okay. So what I mean to say is instead of using your state global management containing all the values rather than split it, and so that whenever theme changes, only the components that are using theme changes. Whenever users value, for example, username or password gets changed or something like that, only that gets changed. Okay. I'm just gonna remove it here. Yeah. Okay. The next is actually called as, okay, batching. Okay. Yeah. For example, you have something like const value of name. Okay. Name. We have got use name. Let's say John. Or let's have one more. Um, name count AQI level. Yeah. Set AQI level equals to react dot use. Okay. Let's say 50. For example, Delhi equals to 300. Something like this. Okay. So what happens is, put it back. Yeah. So what happens is whenever we do something like this, and then have to clean it a little. Yeah. Okay. And then I do something like this. Yeah. It means going to be varied and set AQI level is something like 20 to 60. Okay. What usually happens is this also creates a lot of re-render, as you can see. So one way is to batch it. and how we can match it. Very simple, very actually very simple way, and very important thing to understand here we can do is set state, and we're gonna do previous equals to, come on, sorry, the comma, um count equals to previous dot count plus one. Okay, similarly we're gonna say need to be date and AQI level to be and 60. So what we have done here is actually not to uh, we have not divided separate use states, but we actually have set one set state and we have batched everything together. Okay, in React 18 plus, I think this happens automatically, so we can actually avoid that. Yeah, so these are some of the common ways that we can prevent. Uh, then next, there are few ways to debug as well. We can actually use React DevTools. We can actually consoles. We can use console a lot, like I have used here, and we can actually use a library called why did you render? Okay, this is a library not been tested properly. If I search, yeah, okay. So this is the library I'm talking about. Yeah. So this was not tested with React compiler, but okay, yeah, you can also use this library as well. So I feel like we can end today's video. We I hope you guys have learned something today, and tell me what are the topics that I should get into, and let me know any comments, anything. Okay. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.